Hey TLC, this is Pastor Luke. I'm doing another session on Marriage and Family Month. Our Bible studies have been lining up with our services, and we've been talking about relationships. So when you're related to somebody, you should come into a relationship with that individual where you have communication, number one, and where you have acts, where you spend time and you experience each other, number two. Number three, there should be some form of love being demonstrated between a spouse and a husband and a wife, or within the family. You know, we ought to know each other's love languages. I really believe that. And let's just start off with personality. So I'm more outgoing than Pastor Shauna. I like to spend time with people. I like to communicate with people. I'm more extroverted. She's more introverted. So when she likes to have alone time, or she may read a book to re-energize, I might go visit my brothers or go get on the phone with someone, just talk to someone. And so different personalities. A lot of times couples have different personalities. There may be one that's quiet, one and so we have to understand each other. And so opposites, we talked about opposites last week, last session. And so personality-wise, you know, there's people that are going to be really outgoing or more of choleric. Maybe they want to lead and they want to show. They want to, take initiative, or there's more a personality type where they kind of sit back and watch things, right? And so personalities, it's okay. I mean, it's okay if you have opposites personalities. I think just understanding each personality and how they function. God gave us personality within our soul, and so not every personality is perfect, but not every personality is bad. All personalities have good qualities, and some have some negative qualities, and that's why we got to renew the way we think. And so just understanding that when you come into a relationship and in a covenant, a lot of times personalities may conflict. However, I really think that your own personality, you can keep yourself or your soul in check, and you can at times just be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to wrath, and just listen to your spouse and where she's coming from or where he's coming from, and listen to each other, right? Be quick to listen. So I think a lot of times when personalities, a lot of times some people want space. Now, I'm a people person. I don't want space. I want to deal with the issue right then and there. That's my personality. But Pastor Shauna, if we're getting an argument and she wants space, and then I have to give her space, but then I'm wanting to come right behind and make sure we resolve it. And sometimes it doesn't help resolving. It just makes it worse, right? You're just talking in circles. And sometimes, so I got to understand that, hey, maybe we do need to spend time, just a little bit of space, and sometimes apart. Now, if that's all you do to resolve the issue is stay apart and never resolve it, that leads to resentment, bitterness, and it's a bad road to be on, where you're just going to say, okay, how do we resolve this? By just separating. And a lot of times that's what people do, and relationships go south. They don't last very long because they never learn to be resilient, learn to get back together and to resolve things and to love each other despite differences. And so I think personalities is a big thing. And for me, we have different cultures, just the way I was brought up and the way she was brought up. She's Canadian. She was upper state New York on the east side, near Ottawa, south of Ottawa, Smiths Falls. It's just different culture. It's not the same culture I grew up in. I grew up in a little town, just south of here, about 30 minutes, Kettleman City. Hispanics, migrant workers. We ate Hispanic food. She didn't grow up eating Hispanic food. She didn't grow up in the same kind of culture that I grew up. Her culture was a little bit more conservative, probably not as outgoing as our culture. And yet, so when you marry somebody from different cultures, I think it's important to just give yourself time to the culture that you're being married into, and to love your in-laws that are part of the Canadian culture there, right? Even the way you talk and the way you communicate and the way certain vowels sound, or they might make emphasis on different words, and just to me, I thought it was important to just love the family, just to love them. Because I think coming from different cultures, you might think, well, my culture is better than your culture, and that's not true. You might enjoy aspects of your culture and think they're better than another culture, but it doesn't mean that your culture is better than your spouse's culture. So I found that if I loved, regardless, if I loved Papa and Mimi and my brother-in-laws and sister-in-law, if I just loved them, I just wanted to love them. And I thought, what would I want Pastor Shauna to do with my family? And so when I moved out there in 2003 to Canada, I said, I'm going to love her. I'm going to love them like they're part of my family. I'm not going to be bitter. I'm not going to talk behind their backs, and I'm not going to try to put them in a negative light in front of my spouse. I'm just going to love my in-laws, who are, it's a different culture. And because, love really transcends culture. If you love somebody, regardless, love speaks louder than any cultural bias that any individual may have. Love is greater. And I did. And so, did I do it perfectly? Probably not, but I love my in-laws. I love Papa and Mimi. I know sometimes when they're at church or they're visiting, I'll say I love my in-laws, because the saying goes is like, the in-laws are the outlaws, or the mother-in-law. I hate my mother-in-law. There's friction between your wife and your mom, and that's called the mother-in-law syndrome, right? Or vice versa. You just one person loves their wife but hates their family, so it doesn't really make sense to me. I know there's different situations where people come from a hard family, or maybe their mom or dad wasn't a good example. Maybe they don't have a good relationship with their kid, and so there's different situations. However, in my situation, it wasn't like that. They were very good, God-loving, God-fearing people, and so even though it was a different culture, I thought it was important for me to demonstrate love to the culture. And so now, Shauna's been here in the States a lot longer than I was in Canada, and she's adapted to my culture, and it doesn't bother her, and she enjoys Mexican food. She enjoys the Mexican culture. I mean, our church is we're brown. We do. She does worship in Spanish and in English. So just different things. Where she didn't really necessarily have to endeavor to adapt, but she made it happen, and I think it showed her love for me, that she's willing to come to where God called us here. So I didn't bring her here. God brought us here to start a Church-Avenal. So I think coming from different cultures, there can be some issues. However, if you just walk in love, those issues really resolve themselves. And different social classes. Sometimes, Shauna and I didn't have much when we first got married, so we were on the same class. I always joke that I married up, but in reality, we didn't have much. When we got married, I think I was $500 in debt, and she wasn't in debt, so that was the difference. So just your social classes, I think we got to understand that a lot of times people, the Cinderella story is really not reality in a lot of situations. That social classes, it's sometimes difficult for the one individual who didn't grow up in a high class society, and then all of a sudden you're marrying somebody and you come from very little, and so that could present a lot of problems. And so if that's the situation, one spouse to the other spouse, they got to realize, hey, wait a minute, they might not be accepted because of where they come from. However, the solution to that and the remedy to that is bearing each other, one another in love. Just walking out things in love, and so I think it's important for those who are from different social classes, if they fall in love, which it does occur, that they're open about it, that they talk about how they were brought up and what they had or what they didn't have, and that they communicate those things to each other so they understand that, hey, well, this is what is expected in the culture or the social class that I came from. We didn't do these things, and the other person has to be open to how the other was, brought up socially. And I think that it can lead to different accounts. Someone marries someone that didn't have much. Well, I'm going to keep my money, and you keep your money, which you don't have a lot of money. So I don't know. I don't know if that's correct. I don't think that's a good thing. I think they need to talk about, whether they're going to join their accounts or not. I'm not saying one is right and the other is wrong, but I do believe in joint accounts. If someone's more responsible with money in the marriage relationship and they're a better steward, sometimes that other individual has to lean upon them and make sure that, not to be blind, but to share each other's and to communicate each other's how the budget looks, but to lean on the one that's stronger in that area, just like you would with your personalities. If you're in a social setting and your wife's quieter, maybe it's time for you to take cue to do what you do and to be friendly, but then to give your spouse a time to speak, and then also as yourself to acknowledge your spouse being with you. I think that's a big issue with me. A lot of times I'm so social, then my spouse is kind of left out of the loop, and I need to stop and pause and think about it and say, well, wait a minute, let me give time to Shauna at the moment. And so I think, with finances and joint accounts and money can cause a lot of stress and a lot of trouble. Not living above your means, tithing and giving. I think, you ought to come together and talk to each other about giving and tithing and what you agree with and what you don't. I know one situation, the wife was tithing from her income and the husband wasn't tithing, and he didn't agree with it. He said, no, you don't need a tithe. And I was asked the question whether should I tithe or not. He doesn't want me to tithe, and my response to that was, should you obey God you should obey God rather than man. That was, when someone in your relationship wants you to do something contrary to God, I do believe we ought to follow God first, because it's not going to be detrimental to that individual, and it will set the example. And so, regardless, I think that the line of communication, if you guys are into agreement about giving I know Sean and I get together and we talk about who we want to give, if we want to increase our giving in certain areas, or to certain missionaries or to certain ministers. We get together and we talk about it. Hey, what's the goal for the day, for this year in our giving? What are we going to increase? Who we're going to increase it by? How much? And so it's important to communicate all these things. Talking about your social class, your cultures are very important, and the money issue. If there's money problems in the family, then it can cause a lot of stress. And to be honest with one another in love. I mean, to be honest, say, hey, well, you look really. That's not the kind of honesty I'm talking about. I'm going to tell you like it is. No, being honest in love, and being open about your finances, talking to each other about, hey, how much do we want to save, or and without doing it in spite, but talking to each other about these things in love. I think it's really important. I think a lot of people get into trouble because of a lack of communication in these areas, and so we'll continue. We'll continue to talk about Marriage and Family Month. I hope you've been enjoying it. These topics, and so I'll see you soon. God bless.